It was supposed to be a routine stop, just another day on the job. But when a smug cop pulls over a man he assumes is just another random driver, things quickly take a turn no one could have predicted. The officer's condescending tone and prejudiced remarks set the scene for a tense encounter. What he doesn't realize, though, is that the man sitting calmly in the car is no ordinary citizen. He's a highly trained Secret Service agent. As the situation escalates, the officer continues to underestimate his target, completely unaware of the life-altering lesson headed his way. What happens next leaves everyone stunned, proving that appearances can be deceiving, and that justice has a way of showing up in the most unexpected forms. Stay tuned to see how this powerful moment unfolds and why it's sparking conversations everywhere. You won't want to miss what comes next. The officer, clearly enjoying his moment of authority, leans into the driver's window, tossing out comments laced with arrogance. He smirks as he asks for ID, confident he's in control of the situation. The man in the driver's seat, calm and composed, quietly reaches for his wallet. His movements are deliberate, almost too calm, and for a split second, it's as if he knows something the officer doesn't. As he hands over his credentials, the officer barely glances at them, more interested in asserting his power than in actually checking the details. The tension is thick, the kind that makes you hold your breath. The man remains silent, watching the officer's every move, his face unreadable. But what exactly is he waiting for? And why hasn't he said anything yet? The officer, completely unaware of the storm brewing, is about to make a decision he'll regret forever. The officer steps back, looking over the car with an air of superiority. He begins to question the driver with unnecessary aggression, asking where he's coming from, where he's going, and why he's driving this kind of car. The man responds calmly, offering simple, polite answers, but his restraint only seems to frustrate the officer more. Meanwhile, a small crowd begins to gather nearby, sensing something isn't right. Passers-by exchange concerned glances, unsure if they should step in or stay out of it. One bystander starts recording the scene on their phone, the tension becoming impossible to ignore. The officer grows bolder, trying to provoke a reaction. He doesn't notice the subtle shift in the driver's demeanor, a quiet confidence, almost as if he's waiting for the officer to cross a line. Something about the man's calmness is unnerving, but the officer doesn't stop. Little does he know, the truth is about to unravel in a way no one could have expected. The officer, now visibly annoyed, decides to take things further. He orders the driver out of the car, his voice sharp and commanding. The man hesitates for a moment, then steps out slowly, his every move measured. The crowd watches in silence, the air thick with unease. The officer begins patting him down, asking more questions, his tone laced with condescension. Then, as if to assert his dominance, the officer snatches the man's wallet again, this time actually opening it. His eyes land on the badge tucked inside, and for a moment he freezes. It's not the reaction anyone expects. His confident demeanor falters, but he quickly tries to recover. "You think this is real?" The officer scoffs, holding up the badge for the crowd to see. The driver finally speaks, his voice calm but firm. "You might want to think twice about what you're doing." That single line sends a ripple through the tension, leaving everyone wondering what's about to happen. The officer smirks, still holding the badge, clearly convinced it's fake. "Nice try," he says mockingly, tossing it onto the hood of the car. The man remains calm, but his eyes narrow slightly. It's a subtle shift, but enough to signal that something big is coming. Before the officer can say another word, a black SUV with tinted windows pulls up to the scene. The doors open, and two men in suits step out, their movements sharp and purposeful. The crowd murmurs in confusion as the men approach. They flash their own badges, and the officer's face drains of color. "Agent Carter, is there an issue here?" One of the men asks, addressing the driver with undeniable authority. The officer stumbles over his words, clearly caught off guard. The driver, Agent Carter, stays composed, but his silence speaks volumes. The tension in the air thickens as it becomes clear this situation is far bigger than anyone imagined. The officer, now visibly shaken, stammers as he tries to explain himself. "I didn't know, I thought." He starts, but the suited men cut him off. "You thought wrong," one of them says sternly, locking eyes with the officer. Agent Carter steps forward, finally breaking his silence. "You didn't care who I was. You made assumptions, and you let your bias guide you." His voice is calm, but the weight of his words lands hard, silencing everyone around. The officer begins to apologize, his earlier arrogance nowhere to be found. But before he can finish, one of the suited men pulls out a phone, playing back footage of the entire encounter from a hidden body camera on Carter. The crowd gasps as the truth is laid bare, every word, every action caught on tape. As the officer realizes the magnitude of what's just happened, Carter picks up his badge from the hood and turns to the crowd. "This wasn't just about me," he says, his voice steady. "This is about accountability and change." He walks back to his car as the officer stands frozen, knowing his career and reputation may never recover. But just as Carter gets into his vehicle, he glances back and says, "Next time, treat everyone with respect. You never know who you're dealing with." The officer's face falls as the black SUV and Carter's car drive away, leaving behind a lesson no one present will ever forget. As Agent Carter's car disappeared into the distance, the crowd remained silent, processing what had just unfolded. The officer stood alone, his earlier bravado replaced by a sinking realization of his mistake. For him, the day would never be the same. The bystanders, once uncertain, now saw the importance of holding others accountable for their actions, especially those in positions of power. The footage from the hidden camera quickly made its way online, spreading like wildfire. It wasn't just a story about one bad cop. It was a reminder to everyone that we must rise above bias, that we all have a responsibility to treat each other with dignity and respect. As for Agent Carter, he knew the battle for justice was far from over. But for today, he'd made his point, showing that sometimes the most unexpected people hold the key to real change. And with that, he drove off, leaving a lasting impact.